show, please go to dogmanencounters.com and submit a report. I'd love to hear from you. Tonight's guest is Art. Art, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Vic.
Thanks for being here. Art, please give us a brief bio on yourself.
I'm 41 years old. I've been driving a truck for about 20 years now. Live in the Chicago area, Midwest, and been here for about 25, 26 years. I work at night. Mostly it's in the Midwest, and guess that sums it all.
Yeah, from talking with you in the pre-interview, it sounds like most of your routes take you through some pretty heavy dogman territory.
Definitely.
Yeah, I'd say so. You say that you've had more dogman encounters than you can count. Is there any single thing you did that seems to have triggered those encounters?
No. What I think that happened is that I'm more aware of them. Now I know that they are out there.
Yeah, once you become aware that they're out there, that does seem to make you a lot more likely to have encounters and know when they come around. It only makes sense. If you had to guess, how many dogman encounters do you think you've had over the years?
Let's see, say like 4 or 5. But knowing that they're around me, for the most part, like, I'll say almost every day.
That can't be easy to deal with. At all. What would you say is the biggest dogman you've seen?
I would say about 7 to 8. I was sitting in the truck and it was like eye level with me.
Yeah, that's a big creature right there.
Oh, yeah.
You've got quite a few experiences to tell us about tonight, Art. Starting with your first experience, please tell us about as many of them as you can.
Okay. I was born down in Mexico, by the foothills of Sierra Madre. And when I was 10 or 11, not sure how old I was at the time. I know I was like no older than 11 years old. There was a guy that used to go to my hometown and rent like a little hall and then show some movies, kind of like the movie theaters over here. He started his shows at 8 o'clock at night to make it roughly 2 hours long each. That day, it was all of my friends and neighbors and me was watching the first one. He was done with the first one. We got a little break in between, and then he started the second one. And for some reason, at the time that the show was over, I looked around and all of my friends and all of my neighbors, they were gone. I was the only one left. I was the only kid left in there. So at that time, I was like fearless, I would say. I wasn't scared of basically anything. I grew up thinking the only thing that can hurt you is living things, you know, but I knew how to take care of myself. So that night, I started heading home, and we live by the cemetery. I'll say about 50 meters, 75 meters away from it. Just before I turned on the street that we used to live in, there's a street light up there, and I'll say it's about like 100-meter long street, like from where I made the turn to go into the last straight. So I started walking. When I was like halfway through that street, I stopped there on my tracks because I saw something up ahead underneath that street light. That was my parents' property right there at the corner. And it's got a stone wall, which is about 3 feet high, and then it's got some barbed wire on top of it. And at the corner, there's the utility pole, which is about 30, 35 feet tall. And I stopped. I saw definitely some movement behind the pole. I started looking at it and then focused on the movement. And what I can see was like half the body, like the right side of the body, but it was like too tall to be like a person. So I got a little bit closer, you know, like maybe a step at a time, you know, just a little bit, and then kept on going a little bit, maybe about couple of steps and stop for a little bit and look, couple of steps and look, up until I was able to make out what it was. And this thing, from the looks of it, it was like kind of like yellowish, grayish. It was right behind the pole, and he was like peeking, like kind of like sticking his head out a little bit and then go back behind the shadow. And then did it again. It was like every time that I moved, it will take a peek. I don't know how long that was, but when I got a little closer and then I was able to make out what I was looking at, I didn't know what it was. I really didn't know what it was. If you was up to ask me that day what it was, I will say that it was like a demon or the devil, something like that. But never, I there was no, I didn't even know about Sasquatch at the time, so I didn't know what to make of it. All I know that it was ugly and it was scary. And then I got that feeling, like the fight or flight. And, well, I took off running. For some reason, something just pushed me to just run. And instead of me running the opposite direction, I ran straight towards it. Then I made the turn to go home. As I was making the turn, when I was like running, I looked up over my shoulder and there was nothing there. It was gone. That was the end of that one. Of course, I was, like crying. I was like scared. My heart was pounding. That was the end of it. And years passed by and I just didn't, I was still like thinking about it, but not like, didn't know what it was. I didn't know such a thing will exist, such a thing to be so real or be real. To me, it was kind of like a ghost or some spirit or I don't know. So as the time passed, I just forgot about it. Didn't even think about it like for almost 30 years. This one was in like 2015, I think. I was working that day and I got to this company. And what normally we do, we just go there, park. Basically what we do is pull up, move out of the way, and then get out of the truck and go and check in. And then they give us a door, and then we just go back to the truck and then just back up and wait. Well, this day I pull up and got out of the truck, went and check in. And for some reason, this time it's a big parking lot. And there is no reason why it took me so long to get the truck straight. I was almost hitting the retaining wall, the concrete wall that they got there at the end of the parking lot. And there's like maybe 2 or 3 trees around there, along the wall. Now they're probably about 50 feet high, something like that. I was looking at my mirrors. I looked at my passenger side, and okay, I'm straight. And then I was looking at my driver's side mirror, and I noticed some movement out of the corner of my eye, like kind of like in front of the mirror. And then the way my truck is, it's got a little square. Like the window, it's like square, and it's got like a triangle kind of in the front, right next to it, on the door. I focused on that movement, and then I put my face almost up against the window. And then that's when I noticed that this thing was standing there, behind the wall. I just couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe what I was looking at. Then, I think like he let me look at him for like a split second, maybe a second or two. And what I think, like, cause I was looking down, because if you're in a truck and you notice some movement, your first instinct is to look down, not to look up. Then I looked down and then I was seeing something, then I looked up higher, still looking, was seeing something a little higher. And when I came up to like where his face was, it was like almost at eye level with me. me being on the truck. I felt like the back of my head, the hairs in my back, the back of my head stand up. And, it was like one of those moments that you don't know what to do, or like you're not sure if you're looking at it. But all of this happened like within like just a brief second. I noticed that this thing turned around and left. Or I take that back. I'll say that step away from the light. Don't know if it took off, if it left the area, or it was just hiding back in the dark. So I was still in disbelief, and I started backing up, got out of the truck, and opened the doors. Why? Don't ask me why. I don't know. It didn't hit me up until I was in semi-trucks. The right door opens first, and then the left door opens. So when I was opening the left side door, the driver's side door, that's when it hit me. Like I'm down here holding this door, and this thing is like out there. It's big and hairy. I look up on the side of the truck, and I didn't see anything. So I started paying more attention into behind where I saw it, and I didn't see anything. Finished backing up, and I was just looking at it. This thing was definitely black, some streaks of brown. The best way I can describe it, it's like when you see a black horse, with the sun it gets a little streaks of like blue. It was about the same, but instead of being blue, it was like reddish brown. You see some skin underneath the fur. It was wet. I would say this one was at least 3.5, 4 feet wide. It was a male. It got the chest of a male. I would say that from nipple to nipple, at least like 2 feet, 2.5 feet wide apart. The arms were like thick and big, long. It was kind of leaning forward a little bit. I didn't get to see the face, but I got to see a little bit of the jaw. And that was pretty much all the details I can remember. I didn't know what I was looking at. Of course, I already heard about Bigfoot, but not a dog man. I started researching, trying to find an answer to what it is that I saw that night. Then started checking out some videos in YouTube, and that's how I came across your show. Started listening to them. And one day I was listening to one of your shows. The guy is from California. He said that he saw one kind of like in yellow, golden, yellowy, grayish kind of color, kind of like the coyote color, that it was kind of like skinny. He described exactly what I saw down in Mexico back almost 30 years ago. And that's when it hit me, like right there. That was the show that got me started thinking maybe that's what it was. And the more I listened to your shows, the more witnesses I listened to, the more that reassured me that that's what I saw. Because definitely I saw a mussel back then. You got a mussel, not a long one. It was tall, and the legs were kind of bent backwards. But the color didn't match anything that for the most part, the people describe they see. That's why I didn't know what to make out of it. That's like I said earlier. If anybody was out to ask me, I would say that I saw a demon or the devil, or I don't know, a ghost or something. But never I would think that I was going to see a dog man or something that resembles a werewolf. Because, not to mention that the werewolf movies that we used to see, they were nothing that resembles what we see now in the movies. There was nothing to compare. The best I can describe of the werewolves movies that they got back in the day were maybe Eddie Munster or something like that. He supposedly was a werewolf. but that's about it. Then from back in the 50s, 60s. So I started listening to your shows like 2 or 3 at a time every day. You know, every time I got a chance, I started listening to your shows, started paying attention to what people were talking about. And on my days off, sometimes I take the family out for a walk. And one day, for some reason, I had to stop and started looking behind me. I didn't know what to make of. You know, it was like that nervous feeling. I felt my chest pounding, and I didn't know why. So I turned around, and we kept on walking. At this time, when we was, I'll say about a couple of 100 yards to be out of the woods, we heard a dog whining, like when you kick the dog, you know, like the whining noise that they make. That was not normal, you know. Why will be a dog in the woods? And I remember my wife telling me, "Hey, what's wrong with my phone? You know, I keep taking pictures and they're all blurry. I don't know what to make of." And I told her, you know, because you're moving the phone. When you're walking, you're taking the pictures and you're moving the phone. And of course, it's going to be blurry. And she was like, no, look. And she took one. And it was like, you can see the trees clearly, clear as day. But like, on the ground, you see like these grayish, blurry things, you know, kind of like a cloud, if you want to call it like that. But it was kind of like swiped, like if you see the picture, it was like swiped from side to side. But it was like a blur. And I was like, you know, just clean the lens. That's all you got to do. And I got ahead of the group of my kids and wife and turned back and aimed the phone at the woods. Took a couple of pictures and then turned around and took another one. And that was it. We left the area. When I was at work, like a couple of days later, I was looking at the same pictures. I was looking at a dog face. Which you see the snout, you see the eyes, the ears. But if you see a husky, a really dark husky, that's exactly what I was looking at. But it was like, there's no way a husky's face can be that high up in the tree. So what I did, I lighted up the picture a little, and then I see that it was another one, a little one, like halfway up, and then a darker one on the side. But those were like blurrier. The features that struck me the most was the face, and that it actually got a hand in front of it, kind of like the holding like one of the tree limbs, something like that. And it got like making kind of like a fist. And then you see the thickness of the, I would say the fingers. I don't see no claws, it's just the fingers. Unfortunately, I broke my phone. And a lot of those pictures went with the phone. And I just wasn't able to recover it. And it's been going on for, I'll say 2.5 years by now, like almost 3 years, I would say. Because I know that I started researching these things for, it's not that I'm a researcher, I just started looking for answers. That's all I wanted. But the more I get to know about it, the more I want to know that the more I read about it, the more I hear about it, the less I know. And it just keeps on going. The more you hear or the more you read, the less you know. That's the best way I can put it. It got to the point where the same sensations that I feel in the woods when I know that they're around. Oh, there's another thing. The first day that those pictures that I took, we was hearing a lot of popping noises. You know, but I can describe, the best I can describe it is like when I squat, both my knees crack, and that's what I was hearing, but louder. My knees crack once, but these things just keep cracking like 4 or 5 times, and then stop, and then moment of silence, and then maybe 4 or 5 times. When I was listening to the puppy noises, I thought that that's how they communicate. After I realized what is that I was seeing, I remember asking you a while back if these things were like dangerous, if these things were like spirits or flesh and blood. Because if you remember, we've been in contact for at least since 2015, something like that, like when I first came across your show. And you say that if I happen to encounter one or something, is to let it be, like just don't, you give me the recommendations, whatever you think is best, like not to run, just walk away, nice and easy, don't look at him in the eyes, and stuff like that. No, basically what you tell everybody. So I left it at that. Then I started listening to more of your shows. And there was another person that was in your show, Jody Cook. He's another guy that actually helped me a lot. He's got more knowledge than me. He's got more knowledge than a lot of the people that I can think of. You are like the number one, I would say, with the show and all. And that's how I got a hold of the North American Dogman Project. Well, the thing is that I kept on seeing these things. One day I was driving, and the speed limit is 55 miles per hour. And I looked up to my left, and then I saw 2 of them by a house in the driveway. I was going to stop and turn around and then go and check on them, but I noticed that I got a bunch of cars behind me, so I couldn't, and it's a 2-lane highway, so I just couldn't just pull over to the side and turn around right away. So how I know what I saw, if it was just like a glimpse, these 2 guys keep on showing up in my pictures. There's one that is all black with some stripes in the front, in the chest, in the face. It's got some markings, white markings. And the other one is kind of like brown, grayish brown. I can put them like the color of the tree trunks, kind of like that kind of gray. And by the time I reacted, it was a little too late. So that was it for that time. Another time, I went into the woods. I was walking on the trail, and I saw something that caught my eye, and I went in there and tried to investigate what I was looking at, tried to understand what I was looking at. I was looking at broken branches, but here's the thing. They're pine trees. Since pine trees is evergreen, so it was green on the ground. Maybe about 3 feet high, 4 feet high, something like that. Kind of like making like into like half a circle. But when I was looking from the trail, I couldn't make out what it was. Up until I was like right in the middle of it. I kind of squat and started looking. So, squatting down, I wasn't able to look over the branches and the leaves. Then I got up, and then I understand I think I do understand what it was. You still see through it, but not completely, just like enough to camouflage. It's like a blind, which was maybe about 40 feet long, kind of like in a half a circle, about 3 to 4 feet high off the ground. And I was looking at it. Then I heard some movement. I was kind of like down on my knees looking, and some broken branches that they're about 3 or 4 inches thick, and they were like green. They were still like not dried out. They were like still like, like got the green leaves and all of that. So like for a person to do that, it'll take maybe to secure one end and maybe 3 or 4 guys to bend the branch back and snap it. So as I'm looking at it, I heard some noise right in front of me. So I look up and I saw it moving from 12 o'clock to 2 o'clock. Then I lose sight of it. It was just like, it covered at least 30, 40 feet in maybe like that. Just like, it was out of sight. And I started hearing some more noise up to my right. That's when I knew that this thing is moving fast. And it's like, I don't know if it's coming at me or not, but I better get out of here. So I started backing out of there, got on the trail, and picked up my pace. And that was that. That was it for that day. Another time, I was with my kids and wife, and we went there. We went around the woods and came back out. And the kids are playing. I think I sent you a picture of that, where the kids are maybe about 40, 50 feet away from the gate. And I was looking straight at the kids. My wife took the picture, and she didn't see that there was like 2 or 3 by the gate. You can see her shadow. You can see the kids right there. But we didn't see these things. And then she took another one. I don't know if that picture is before or after the one with the kids. But you see this thing by the gate. I'm 5'9". The green post by the gate, they're about 6 feet high. And this thing is kind of like leaning forward and still towers over those at least by a foot. And I measured the gate and I look at the thing and it's almost as wide. This one's got to be about 4 feet, 4.5 feet wide from shoulder to shoulder. And it's got to be about 7.5 at least, if not more. It's just kind of like leaning forward. And this thing is looking straight at the camera. It's a little blurry, but if you know what to look for, you know that it's there. And next thing I know, there are one, and the other picture is like 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 4. And with the whole picture, you can tell up until you get closer to that area there. That's when you see it. One is like sitting down, the other one is standing up, and the other one is like completely flat on the ground. And it seems to be like maybe 2 more to the left of them, which is to the right of the picture. I think that I see a couple of them, smaller ones, laying on the ground, but you barely make them out. So over time, from going there a lot, we took pictures. We got like over 3,000 pictures by now. And I can assure you, we go through every single one of them. We're going to find, not in all of them, but in most of them, we're going to find something. Another thing that I found one day, it was a track. It was canine, but this thing was at least, I'll say 4.5, 5 inches wide, but maybe 5 by 5. I'm about 200 pounds, and me stepping on that area there, I will make that type of impression on the ground as that print was. I've seen some marks on the ground, like you can tell that those are the claws or the you see the print, that the back leg. I got another print that's not that clear, but you can make out what it is. It got to be at least the size of my work boot. And I mean like wide and long. It's got to be about 11 inches by 5 inches wide. Something like that. Another thing, I saw another one that I see a marking, like where they kind of like mark it with a claws with a hand. Well, I don't know what to call it, a hand or a paw. I guess I'm gonna have to call it a hand. And you see the claws strike, like 3 marks going down, like from the front to the back. But you see the fingers, and they gotta be at least, my thumb is not as thick as those marks there. It's not even close to be as thick as whatever made those marks. Another thing that I forgot to mention to you, one time, this was like at the end of 2015, I was listening your show. And it was one of those days that it wasn't cold, but it wasn't hot. So I got the truck off and I got the window down a little. And this guy, an older guy, this happened in Michigan. He's from Michigan too. He came up to me and started talking to me, and he overheard what the guest was saying in your show. And he asked me a couple of questions, and then he started listening to it. And he was telling me that he first moved into the area where he's living now back in the early 70s. And that there was not a lot of houses built at the time. But the neighbors complained about a noise going on at night. And he was saying that it sounds like a woman moaning. And first thing, when everybody agreed to it, that probably it's like a psycho, you know, somebody who grabs a woman, probably kills them and goes and dumps them somewhere else, you know, because of the area being so far away from. It will give him good concealment. So he said that one day they all got together. It was like on a weekend, and they decided to go investigate what they were hearing. So there were like 3 or 4 guys. He really didn't remember how all of them. And they followed the noise, and he said that they couldn't keep up with the noise because it was like as if it was moving. But it got to a point where there was a road, and whatever was making the noise had to cross the road, and there was some lightning on the road, on the main street or something. And that's when they got to see what the part that he saw is that it was kind of tall, big, and hairy. And that's all for that. And that was the end of it. As far as my sightings or experiences, I would say they go like very consistent. Like sometimes I want to go for a walk, and I get to the point where I'm like at the wood line, and something like maybe not today, maybe just turn around and leave, you know. And sometimes it's like so inviting, like I feel okay, like if I can go there with no problem. But some other days I feel like I shouldn't go. And that has been happening for a while now. Since spring of 2017, I have not been able to go into the woods because of the same feeling I get, you know, like I don't feel safe going in there. And another thing, there's a lot of markings in there, you know, like big branches across the trail, a lot of broken trees. Sometimes you walk maybe 300-400 yards, and you come across a tree that fell, like, you know, across the trail, and it's not in a way that it's all the way to the ground. It's kind of like lifted. So if you want to keep going forward, you got to go over the tree. You got to jump over the tree. Some of them, I think I sent you a video last weekend. And the reason I took the video was because the tree that was leaning down and up against the other tree, to me that looked like a ramp, so they can just go up and hike back up there, or I don't know. when we go over some of the pictures and we see that there's a lot of structures like X's, A's, shadows, you see faces. But for the most part, I'll say that every picture that we take, there's got to be a sign, something. Not necessarily of a dogman or Sasquatch, but there's something there that doesn't fit within the area. And there's water over there. There's a lake. And there's cornfields. A lot of them. And these patch of woods is like in the middle of the outskirts of town, and it's like surrounded by cornfields, and it's got the lake on one side and still like more cornfields. It's not a big lake, it's a little one. So the thing is that the woods are not even like maybe, but I would say maybe 15 acres, if not less. And that's the thing, that you will never imagine seeing these things in that small of an area, you know, like that small of woods. That's basically nothing for what you think that the habitat for these things or what they need for them to survive or to thrive. And listening to your shows, some of the people say that what they think those markings are, I still don't know what exactly they mean. You know, like when you see an X, when you see a branch. In one of the pictures that I got, I see a whole tree upside down hanging from another tree. You know, you see the roots up on top of the other tree hanging down. You see big, I'm talking about like 12, 14 inches thick trees, you know, that they're knocked down, put up on top of another tree. You need like machinery to do that, you know, to pick up the tree trunk and lift it up and put it up there, maybe 5, 10 feet up onto the other tree. I mean, there's no way that was done by a human. Or if a human did it, they use machinery. You know, the forklift, I would say, I don't know, a bobcat or something like that. But there's no signs of tracks. There's no signs of anything. You hardly can bring in a ATV through there. And one day we was walking, and we had this researcher with us, Donna Fink. She's with North American Dogman Project. And we started going, you know, kind of like down the hill. And I turned around and I told her if they can smell that. And it wasn't strong odor, but it was kind of like a rotten, wet. It was not a pleasant odor, but it wasn't strong. It was just, I would say, like mild. But we kept walking in the area, and the smell just disappeared. It just was gone. And she was telling me about some of the markings, you know, like sometimes when you see these things across the trail or across something that's kind of like letting you know what she thinks or what she can relate to. It's like when they put a thing across the trail, it's like don't go past the point, like do not enter sign or something like that. But we go on a weekend and we see those things across the trail, you know, those big trees or big tree limbs or those X's or the things across the trail or some. We see them on I'll say like on a Saturday. And for next Saturday, they're not there. They're gone. And a lot of these things that I noticed, a lot of these trees, they get dragged from maybe about 50, 60 yards. And they get put into a kind of like an A, or like I said, you know, like across the trail. Another thing that I noticed that they do is the blinds that they put like on the side of the trail, maybe about 50, 60 yards away from it. And There's another area that we saw this year, but it's on the other side. That I've been wanted to go there, but I get to a point where I stand by the entrance or by the wood line, and something just keeps on telling me, don't even think about it. Just walk away from it. Just get going, get out of here. And then you just gotta let it go, because it's only me. For the most part, it's the wife, my 3 kids, and me. And there's not much I can do. If it happens to be one of them right in front of us coming at us, yeah, I can say I can run, or maybe you just leave the kids behind, but will anybody do that? So if I go there by myself, it's basically me by myself going through these things and putting this in, over my shoulders. And it's a scary thought, thinking of like you're walking down in the woods and then you got your family with you, as you encounter one of these things that you don't know what you can tell what they're capable of, but you don't know what their intentions are, We've been there for so long, we've been going through there for so long that it kind of feels like they're friendly, but they're not. At the same time, they let you know when you're going too far, but they also let you go through so far. I don't know if that makes any sense. It's like you can come through here today, but the next time you show up there and you want to go through there, and then you find out that they're not in the mood, they're not going to have it today, they don't want you around, and they just let you know. I mean, there's times I feel like when I get close to the wood line, I feel like the hair in the back of my head stands, and then that's when I go like, no, it's not a good day to go through there. Especially now that the overgrowth is like way too, it's too much. You can't see past maybe 10, 15 feet away from you. Like, so it's not, I don't think it's a good idea to do it right now. Too much. Oh, this one time, we was taking some pictures, because it kind of goes down like in a hill, not too steep, but there's a big tree. The wife thought that it was so cool, to take a picture, and then, like the scenery, the background is so beautiful. And she decided to take a picture. She actually took like 4 pictures. And the first one, you don't see anything. The second one, you see a little pet turning towards the camera, and you see the eyes and the ears and the little snout. And the third one, you still see it, but looking the other way. And on the fourth one, you just see kind of like the back of it. And then we started getting close to the tree, and for some reason, something threw a empty can, because sometimes the kids leave like empty bottles, stuff like that, before you get to pick up. And they threw one of those empty bottles at us, like a can. I think it was a can, but they threw at us. It was like, kind of like let us know that, yeah, that's close enough. It's time for you guys to leave. And then I started feeling that urge to get out of there. And another time, me and my son, we're walking, and I did send you that picture, and I don't know if you see what I saw in there. I don't know if you can see it or you can tell what it is. I mean, it was weird because we were walking and we didn't get to see. We didn't see what it was, At least I didn't see it. We just passed by it and like if nothing was there. Then later on, I asked my son if he saw that, and he said that he never saw or heard anything. So to us, it was like, we see something in the picture. I thought that it might have been a tree stump, something like that. But then when you look at it, it really doesn't resemble a tree stump. It's like way too, I don't know how to explain it. Well, I can see that it's got the mouth open, but I don't know if it's just me or what, like I see like the canine face, the canine legs, and it's kind of like sitting down on his butt. And it looks like he's got his mouth open or something, but it's hard to tell, because the color and all of that is really well blended in. Then we went back there, and we took some more pictures, tried to replicate the picture, and whatever is there, it doesn't even resemble, it's not as big as what you see in the picture. It's like whatever is behind it, it's way smaller than whatever is on the picture. And this thing, like sitting down on whatever it is, it's got to be at least 4 feet high. And another thing, another picture that I took, it was the first snowfall in 2016. There's an open field, and then you got the wood line, and there's like a fence. The fence is about 5 feet high. And I remember sending you that picture, and you see figures, blurry, I don't know if you can call that, like, that you can make out what it is. But this thing is on all fours. And for this thing being on all fours, it still towers over the fence, which is, it's got to be at least 5.5 feet from the ground to the shoulder on all fours. There's a lot of things that I used to do before I got the second encounter, the one in Michigan. There's a lot of things that I used to do. I used to pull up to the side of the road, take a nap, get out of the truck, relieve myself, check the tires, check everything, check the lights on the trailer, stretch myself, just take a little walk around the truck. Those things I don't do no more. Sometimes we have to sweep the trailers. We drop them off at a warehouse, which is in the middle of nowhere. Once we bring another load, we go around the back and pick up an empty trailer, and we got to check for, we got to sweep them up to bring back those trailers over to the, wherever they're going to be reloaded. And, you're doing that in the middle of nowhere at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. Once you know what's out there, it's not an easy feeling. It's not an easy, usually all you got is a little flashlight, the broom, and that's about it. Maybe a pocket knife. But you're cornering a trailer, inside a trailer. That's, for the most part, what I do. I try to put the back end of my trailer to where I see that there's people around. And sometimes when there's no people around, I just hook up to it, open the thing, the back, check for, make sure that it's an empty trailer, and just haul it out of there. If I have to sweep it to by the guard check or something like that, that's what I do it. There's a lot of places that I still go when I drive around, like Michigan. Sometimes I gotta go through county roads, 2-lane highways, or Indiana, sometimes in Iowa, Wisconsin for sure. I gotta go, like, let's say from Green Bay to Madison. Sometimes in Holland, Michigan, I gotta go to Muskegon and the area there. And once you're in town, for the most part, most of these facilities are on the outside of town. Like the industrial parks are always on the outskirts of town. There's a couple of places that I go there that really give me the creeps, that my head is in a swivel, my heart is pounding. I'm not even comfortable. If I can refuse to go there, I will not go there. If it's up to me not to go there, I will stay away from it. Sometimes I can get out of it, but when I'm there, it's like I gotta be looking at every single side, and like up, down, sides. Gotta check everything. And the thing is that you pull out to some of these companies, and then you gotta go around the building. You got about 100-yard walk. And sometimes it's 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, and it's pitch black. All you got, it's a little flashlight. And you're basically in the middle of nowhere. You got the wood line on your left and the building on your right. And there's basically you going through an alley between the wood line and the building, and then you still got to go around. And for some reason, I don't understand that in that area there, they got lights, but for some reason, they don't work. To make it even creepier, that's one place in Indiana. Another one, it's in Wisconsin, Janesville, Wisconsin. And got another one in Michigan. In central Illinois, I go to a place and they got the cornfield behind it, and right on the side of you, like basically you're like parked right next to the cornfield, and that's another creepy. I don't know if the cornfield just give it that creepier feeling to it. A few months ago, I think I saw something on the side of the road. It was a roadkill, but it was way too big to be a dog or something. That happened in Wisconsin, on Interstate 43. But I was basically just going 65 miles per hour. You just basically see a glimpse of it, like it's basically spread across the highway, the 2 lanes of traffic, like from the right lane to the left lane, and it's all smashed up. Another thing that happened to me, this happened in Indiana. It's a 2-lane highway, county road, about 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm driving, and my headlights just like cut something being on the road, and I got to swerve. There was a tree branch, but there's no explanation why the tree branch was there. I mean, there's no trees next to the road, like for it to be like, oh, it just fell off and it just broke off the tree and just landed over there. That branch was put there for a reason. Now, I don't mean that branch was put there by a Bigfoot or a dogman or anything. Anybody can do that, and anything can put that thing there. This is like, there was no reason why. If it fell off a truck, well, I do believe that landscapers, they do their job, in the daytime. So the police or whatever, the city workers or whatever, they will move it out of the way. But it was like 2 o'clock in the morning, and there was no reason. And it was perfectly put like across the lane I was traveling on. And I think that's about it, Vic.
Well, I'd say that's more than enough experiences for any person to go through in a lifetime. Goodness gracious. Well, it looks like we're about out of time here, Art. Before we go, do you have any closing comments you'd like to share?
Sure. We don't need to prove that they exist. I know that eventually somebody is going to kill one and they're going to come forward, but still it's not going to be enough. I hear a lot of people going into the woods by themselves and in the middle of the night. That's wrong. I got pictures of these things being about 8 feet away from me, 10 feet away from my kids. And we don't see them in the day, broad daylight. Can you imagine how close they can get to you at night? For you, basically, you're blind. Another thing that a lot of people, they say that they want to shoot him. Don't recommend that. That's the last thing I will do. Because you might hit him once, but one thing, God knows, is not enough to stop him. They move so fast that you're not gonna put them in your sights for a second shot. Unless you go with a group of guys, don't even try to take a shot at these guys. Just let them be. And if anybody that's listening to this, if they get an experience, call Vic. Report it to them. Try to get some help. But people that it's actually out there doing something for you, people like us, that we actually witnessed something. Don't tell your cousin, don't tell your co-workers. The only thing you're going to get is made fun of if they don't believe. Or if they believe but they're too scared to believe, or they think that the cool thing to do is just make fun of you because you saw something that you can explain. That's the reason a lot of the people that have encounters, they don't come up forward and tell us what they go through, That's why there's not a lot of information out there for these things. But, yeah. be careful out there. I don't recommend for anybody to go out there at night. That's for sure.
That sounds like really good advice to me. Yeah, I don't think there's any future in trying to shoot a dog man or trying to shoot dog men. I think that's a mistake you'd make once. Well, Art, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show tonight and sharing all those experiences with us. Thanks again so much for your time. Have a great night.
Thank you for listening to me, Vic.
Oh, thank you. We'll see ya.
All right. Bye.
Bye. If you've had a dogman encounter of your own and would like to speak with me, whether in private or on the show, please go to dogmanencounters.com and submit a report. I'd love to hear from you. Hi everyone, thanks for listening to another episode of Dogman Encounters Radio. I'm Vic Cundiff and I'll be your host for the show. If you've had a dogman encounter of your own and would like to speak with me, whether in private or on the show, please go to dogmanencounters.com and submit a report. I'd love to hear from you. Tonight's guest has been on the show before. Of course, I'm talking about Adam Davis. Adam, welcome back to the show.
Thank you very much, Vic.
Thanks for coming back. I appreciate it. Adam, you were our guest for episode 51. For the listeners who missed that show, please tell them about yourself.
Well, I am currently 42, going on 43 in just a few days here. I've been looking into the phenomenon that we know as the dogman now since early 2005, when I started hearing reports about strange howls out towards where my girlfriend at the time lived. And I didn't know it before until later on when I found tracks around her place that I had actually had an encounter in 2000 that was over in Dayton proper. And she lives close to Germantown. So it's been technically since 2000, but I've been actively investigating since 2005. So I've been actively investigating since 2005, and I've been working with the NADP since early 2015.
You started investigating in 2005, and you've been hooked ever since.
Or they've been hooked on me, one of the two, because it seems like I can't get rid of these things.
Yeah, from what you've told me, it sure seems like it. In episode 51, you told us about an experience you had in 2005. For those listeners who haven't heard that show, please tell us what happened.
Well, I was in my van with three friends. We had gone down to a place called the Land of Illusion. It's a haunted theme park. Just to have a little fun. And just out of curiosity to see if we could hear anything going on down there, too. because they have a large trail that's outside for people to walk on, and I forget how many acres the place takes up. But we went down there, and it was October 19th of 2005, beautiful full moon night, clear as a bell. And we were on our way back to our respective places. I was going to drop everybody off because we were in my van. And we were driving up Germantown Road, which branches off of Route 4. And then Stacy Road continues on in Germantown, because Germantown takes a jog where it becomes Stacy's across the next road. We went across that road. I can't remember right off the top of my head what it was. I think it's Manning Road, if I remember correctly. And we were on Stacy at that point, circling around over to Germantown, because we decided to take a loop up through there to see if there was any activity. And I caught eye shine from my headlights over on the passenger side of the vehicle. And I slowed down, figuring that it was probably a deer. I didn't want it to jump out in front of me with me going 35, 40 miles an hour. And I slowed down to about 15 miles an hour to see if it would go across the road on its own without having to honk the horn at it or anything. And I realized that what I was seeing was not a deer. It was something that was actually sitting in the ditch, and the ditch was about a foot lower than the side of the road. And we all got a good look at it, and by that point in time, my headlights were full on it. And we realized that it was a really huge dog-like thing sitting in the ditch. It's like, everybody's like, holy, all kinds of explicatives. And we got up even with it, and its head was dead center of the passenger side window of the vehicle. Now, again, think about that for a second. This was a foot lower than the road, and its head was still dead center of the window of a minivan. And as we passed, we saw that its eyes were sort of reflecting yellow between the moonlight that was reflecting off of the van and direct moonlight. And just as the back end of my van passed, it got up and took 2 steps across the road, just as casual as anything, and was gone. And this thing was head and shoulders taller than my van when I passed it, because I couldn't see its shoulders on the back window of my van. It was just, I still gotta get chills when I think about this, because it was that close. And if we would have had the window all the way open on that night, it could have very easily reached in and grabbed my one friend that was sitting in the passenger seat. Or he could have reached out and touched it. Neither of which I would have liked to see. But still, it was just shocking to see it that close and then that much detail. And I got a good look at it as it's crossing the road behind me with my rear view mirror on the outside, the side rear view mirror. And I could see that it was clearly walking on its hind legs, and I could see it had what looked almost like hands, but they weren't hands. It didn't have its hands in like this. It was like the fingers were loose, but they didn't look human. It was more raccoon-like. And I got a glimpse of a tail as it went across the road too. It wasn't real long, but it was definitely a tail. And I mean, there's just like classic modern movie werewolf. Dog-like hind legs, walking bipedally, huge upper body, like something out of Van Helsing.
When you were watching it outside the van, did you see anything about it that made you think that it must have some sort of paranormal qualities to it?
Well, other than that it was huge and it shouldn't exist, I didn't really notice anything as far as anything odd, like it seemed ethereal or anything. It seemed just as solid as a human walking down the road. It was massive, though. I mean, we went back the next day to try to see if it could have been a hoax, like if somebody somehow could walk across the road in 2 steps. And my one friend and I are both 6'2", and we tried several times trying to cross that road in 2 steps, and there was no way. It was like 3.5 steps or more stepping out of the ditch, and that was taking giant steps.
Yeah, that must have been a big specimen.
you talk about big, I'd estimate it being a minimum of 7.5 feet tall, maybe closer to 8, because like I said, it was head and shoulders taller than my van, and as it went across the back of my van, when it crossed the road, it blotted out the light.
Vans are pretty tall, so it must have been at least 8 feet tall.
You know, like I said, I stand 6'2", and I've got a van that's just 2 years newer than the one that I had, and it's the same make and model, and eye level is right across the top of that van for me. So the van stands probably about, 5'8" across the roof, just a guess. I'd have to actually measure it, but like I said, it was head and shoulders taller than the van, so it was definitely, a minimum of 7.5 feet.
Oh, I see. You're talking about a minivan. I thought you were talking about a full size.
Yeah, I'm talking about minivan. I mean, even the regular van's not that much taller. It's only maybe about 10 inches taller. But it was still, like I said, it was at the very least 7.5 foot tall. And I would say that probably the top of my van was about, midway of its upper arm. So it was, like I said, just my estimate, about 7.5 to 8 foot.
Well, that's still plenty big enough. Was the dogman you saw that night a source of terror or more so curiosity for you when you were sitting there in the van looking at it?
A little of both. It was like the sudden realization that these things are very, very real, and looking at it, you can just see how muscular it is and look at how it's built in general. It's built for strength and speed, and it's not something that you would want to have curl up at your feet at night like a puppy. There's nothing warm and cuddly about these things. And after that initial shock wore off, it was like, holy cow. It's just like, oh my God, these things are real. And then it's like, oh my God, these things are real. It's just that weird paradox you got going on right at the moment of realization, along with the adrenaline pumping and everything at the same time. That's the way I could describe it. I mean, it's just shocking and exhilarating at the same time.
Oh, I'm sure it was. You just mentioned that you researched dogman sightings for the NADP. How active have you been researching sightings for them lately?
I've been doing a lot of historical research as of late, looking into the background of certain areas that we've been getting reports out of, mainly around here and especially around Germantown. But we've also been getting reports from around Claremont County, which is south of us. We've gotten reports recently from Fort Wayne, Indiana, which is northwest of us. And I've been personally looking into cases that have been going on in the Lockington area, which is about 50 miles due north of us, because that's an area that's historically known for these things. And there's an ongoing thing in Lockington, from what I understand, where people actually go out to where the locks are, because Lockington is associated with the Old Erie Canal, hence Lockington, the locks. But people go out there close to the water, and there are still cases where people will come back with scratches from these things along the side of their cars. They'll hear howling and that sort of thing, and there's the occasional sighting out there where they go looking for trouble, is what I look at it as, but they don't know what they're really getting into. But where they actually go out there and park their vehicle and listen at night and everything.
Are there any sightings that you know about that happened near Lockington that you can tell us about?
I can't remember the dates and stuff off the top of my head. I'm still in the process of actually doing some research, and I'm talking to Jody and Dave about going up there and actually doing some on-the-ground research, since it's in a close proximity to them and me. I mean, it's 50 miles north of Germantown, so it's still a pretty good little hike up there, but it's still close enough to be reasonable to get up there and have a look around.
Yeah, that's not that far at all. Have you had any run-ins with dogmen while researching for the NADP?
As far as actually encountering one while we've been out, we haven't yet. We've come across fresh tracks, and we may have heard some stuff on audio that we didn't hear initially when we were actually there, and we've heard some strange things going on with the woods and everything. Okay, let me go back to last year. Last year, around this time, I went down there along Anthony Road, which is down between Farmersville and Germantown, which is also where we found a majority of the tracks because it's a nice little dirt road. So we track pretty easily there. And we went down there after I had found a kill. There was a deer down there that had been taken by one of these things because the fact that I've never seen any regular animal kill a deer like this, and I've never seen a human be like a poacher. I've never seen them do anything like this to a deer either, where the whole hide was peeled from the back to the front up to the shoulders. And the shoulders were dislocated. One of the front legs was missing. The whole rear end was missing, just leaving the hip bones, and all the internal organs were gone. And there was still meat left on the deer. I went back there a week after I'd found it fresh, and it hadn't been disturbed by any scavengers at all. And by the time Jody and I got back up there to have a look at it, it had still been laying there and nothing had touched it, which is highly unusual considering the number of scavengers we have around here between coyotes and possums and coons and that sort of thing. The day that I got there, there was buzzards around, but they weren't touching it. It was just like there was something about that carcass that they knew not to touch it. And like I said, we went back last year, and it was Jody, me, Dave, and another guy, and let's see, if I remember correctly, Jody's wife, and I think Dave's wife, and the other guy's wife was with us too. We were going up through there, again, to check out everything, because I'd been up there the week before, and they had barricaded, they being Jackson Township, had barricaded off the road for a while, and there were tracks all over the road as far as, regular game tracks, deer, coyotes, coons, buzzard tracks. They'd come down and look around for stuff to scavenge from. And it was all over the road. And there had been no vehicles driving down that road for quite some time because the dust was nice and even. There were no tracks from vehicles. So we went back the next week after I had scouted. And when we were down there, I noticed that they had opened up the road temporarily. Generally, there's very little traffic on that road. It's basically a couple local people that go through there now and then to take it as a shortcut, and mostly the farm traffic and Department of Natural Resources. So, like I said, you can walk down that road and not see anybody go down that road for an hour or two at a time, but very, very light. And I noticed that all of the tracks were on the opposite side of the road from the side that the Department of Natural Resources had fenced off back in 2007. That's highly unusual. I mean, because on an average time, you see tracks going across the road and wandering out into the road and everything from the different animals. And the side where the DNR was dead silent. We could still hear birds and bugs and everything on the opposite side of the road towards the creek. But if you were to just walk 10 or 15 feet into the woods on the DNR side and drop the pin, you probably could have heard it hit the ground. That's how silent it was. We went down through there towards the farm area that the Jackson Township Police has claimed as their training ground. And we get down there, and the whole time we're going down through there, we're hearing the occasional snap or crack of a twig in the woods from the side that's dead silent. And we got this constant feeling that we're being stared at. So we get down to the end of the driveway where Jackson Township has their training ground, And one of the girls is looking up the driveway at something real intently. And I tried to look that direction, but I was at a bad angle as I was talking to the guys because we were seeing motion down from the direction in which we had just come from. And we were going to be going back that direction. And they were looking through a pair of binoculars to see what they could see because they were seeing motion. There was something large and dark just inside the edge of the woods. And then one of the girls said that they saw something that was at the top of the hill where the farmhouse was. And she said that it was something that was dark brown, and she said it was bigger than a dog, but not as big as what she thought a bear would be. And she said that it just sat there staring at him for a good 30 seconds or more. And she was staring back at it, and then she said that it decided to get up and lope off back into the woods, back towards the direction that we came from. And meantime, I noticed that the opposite side of the road behind us had gone dead silent. And we start walking back from where that driveway was, back towards the direction that we came from, and I'm hearing those same sorts of pops and cracks of branches from the opposite side of the road as we're going back. And it just felt really tense the whole time we were out there because, like I said, we were being watched really close. I think the only thing that halfway kept us from potentially being attacked is the fact that there was like 8 or 9 of us out there. Granted, these things, I don't think that would really matter to them, but I kind of look at it as safety in numbers, kind of like a herd. Maybe they were waiting for some of us to become stragglers or whatever, but we stayed grouped up pretty well. And most of us were carrying at least a walking stick or machete or something to get through brush because we wanted to check down closer to the edge of the water too, so we had to hack through a little bit of brush here and there, when we got off of the road for a minute. But it was still, like I said, you just get this, a feeling of dread would be a good way to put it, I think. Because, like I said, number one, it's not natural for the woods to be silent. Unless it's like the dead of winter, and even then, you still have some sounds, like the birds that are still there for the winter, and even at night you'll hear the occasional owl or something. But it was like unnatural silence. And then you hear things popping and cracking in the woods with that. You get that distinct feeling that something is not right here.
You just might be right about the numbers opinion. I cringe when I hear people talking about going out alone looking for them.
Well, I do that occasionally. I know it's dumb, but I usually will scout through first in my vehicle before I actually get out, because I listen, I don't know how many people that you've interviewed have actually said that they've smelled what these things smell like and everything, but the ones that we've had experience around here with, they smell horrendous. Unless the wind is totally wrong. If one has come through when the air is still or you're downwind of one, you'll know it. Because the smell lingers when the air is still. Or if there's the slightest breeze that's blowing towards you, it's probably one of the more horrendous smells that anyone could ever think of smelling. It's like I described before, it's like a freezer full of meat that's been unplugged for 3 weeks, and you mix that with the worst wet dog that you've ever smelled. And it's majorly barf-worthy. But that's the 2 main things that I keep track of when I'm driving down through there or any other rural road. Because if you smell something that smells like really, really bad roadkill and you don't see anything anywhere, even if you drive along and look in the ditches, and then you go back an hour later, that smell's gone, it's more than likely one of these things. Even if you go back a few minutes later and the smell's gone, because I've done that too. I've circled the block, which is, well, the blocks in the country are about a mile on each side. But if you go around and come back through the same way, you'll notice that it's either still there or it's gone, or the scent has moved, like let's say a couple 100 yards away from where it was, then it's one of these things. Because more often than not, I've found tracks later on in correlation with that.
Yeah, they definitely don't smell very good. Considering the fact you investigate them, do you welcome a face-to-face broad daylight encounter with the dogman?
In one sense, I wish that I could, for the fact of being able to somehow or another catch it on camera. I'm planning on getting a couple GoPros and hooking them up to a helmet or something, so when I'm out in the woods, that I could potentially get it to look at one on camera like that. But in the other sense, no. The simple fact is, I'm too old and broken up to run, and I'm too young to die, especially that way. I mean, seriously, these things are, from everything I've seen, they are, at the very least, aggressive from all the encounters I've heard. I mean, there may be the odd ones that look at somebody and doesn't really do anything, maybe intimidate them. But if somebody is alone out there, or maybe a pair of people are out there, I don't think these things would really hesitate if they really wanted to kill them. Because it'd be an opportunity for them to have a quick and easy meal. They don't have to chase it. And they would have no problem taking care of a human, because we don't really have any natural defenses. And most people out walking in the woods at the most generally are only carrying like a stick. I don't know very many people who, these days anyway, go out with anything more than a walking stick, if they go out with a walking stick. They don't generally go out armed unless they're hunting.
And even if they are armed, in almost every case, the weapon's not going to be that impressive against a dogman anyway, so you're still in bad shape if you run into one and it decides to attack you.
Yeah, like Dave did in one of your episodes where he was in the alligator swamp, and he described his encounter when he was on the road, and he got out and shot at one because it was coming at him slow, while the other one was trying to circle around him. If I remember correctly, he used a 357, and he said the thing barely flinched, just trying to look towards the direction where it got hit, and kept coming.
That's right, yeah, he did have a 357. That was episode 95, for anyone who's wondering about that. And when he shot that dogman in the shoulder with that 357, he said it looked like it was just a shove or maybe a light punch. That's all that it did.
Yeah, that's pretty much how he described it to us, and he's actually joined the NADP since then.
Yeah, I'm glad he did. He's a good man. What was the most memorable case you've investigated for the NADP?
The most memorable case in recent memory is one where we got a report from a lady from just south of Germantown, ironically right between Germantown and the Land of Illusion. She said that she was sitting out on her porch, and this is a broad daylight sighting, though it was still towards dusk, but it was still daylight. She saw this dog man come out of the corn, and yes, here we go again with the corn thing. It came out of the corn and walked across the road and over to a house that's abandoned that sits across the road from her place. And she said that that thing's head was almost brushing the eaves of the house. As it went underneath the eaves of the house, and its head was as high as the top of the windows on the house. Now, bear in mind, this is a 1970s style house where the windows were higher off of the ground, in the tops of them go almost all the way up to the ceiling. And if I remember correctly, when we actually went out to interview her, I was looking at the house, and the porch was a good, it was like 2 or 3 steps up onto the front porch before you could go into the door. So you add 8 feet of wall height to that, along with roughly, 20 inches from the ground up to the floor height. You're talking about something that was almost 9 feet tall. And she said that initially she went towards the fence to get a better look at it, because it was about 70 yards between her front porch and the side of this house. And when she got to the side of the driveway closer to get a better look, she realized what she was looking at and ran back into the house and locked the door and grabbed her AR and sat there until her husband got home with the AR stuck between her legs, shivering. And she's just like, well, like I was the first time I saw one. just in total awe and shock of what she saw. Even when she was describing it to us, which we actually interviewed her this past June, you could just hear her voice trembling when she was talking about it. It's just crazy. She's still affected like this.
That was a really big one. Your fiancée has been experiencing some really strange activity around her property lately. Before you tell us about what's been going on there, please tell us about her property.
Well, her property sits on Route 40 through Ohio here. It's just outside of Brookville, so roughly 12 miles north of Germantown, if I remember correctly. And we're rural in the sense that, number one, Brookville's a little farming town in the first place, but we are about 2 miles outside of Brookville. So there's only a few houses in the immediate vicinity. There's a pig farm about a quarter of a mile down the road, and the bike trail where the railroad is, used to be, I should say, runs up through Brookville and past the house. And there's only, let me think here, there's only about 5 houses in the immediate vicinity that are actually inhabited there. Maybe 6. But other than that, it's all corn and soybean fields around in woodland. There's woodland in the immediate vicinity too, probably within a quarter of a mile or less. There's like a little patch of woods behind the house, but that's not really much to speak of. But there is a small stream that's not too far from the house, within a mile. So there's another potential water source there and a lake on the other side going the other direction from where the stream is. So, it's just a perfect habitat for these things out there. They got everything that they could want pretty much.
Yeah, sure sounds like it to me. Now that you've told us about the area where she lives, please tell us about the experiences she's been having with dogmen.
Well, I guess I could go back to her first sighting, which was in, I think it was early April. I had actually told her about what I do with the Nadp and everything about 3 weeks prior. And, of course, she thought I was just feeding her a line about these things. And then we were heading back from Brookville that one night. And it was just about dusk. The sun was still up, but it was right on the verge of going down. She's talking to me, and we were heading westbound on 40. And she sees something out my window. And she is stopped in the middle of what she was saying and says, "What is that?" And I'm like, "What?" She said, and she points and says, "That." I'm driving, so I kind of look out of the corner of my eye, try and keep my eye on the road in front of me. And I see this big black dog man about 250, 300 yards out running and keeping up with the van. And I won't say on the air what I said, but needless to say, I was not happy. And it was, like I said, going the same direction as we were going. And we lost sight of it as we passed a house that had a few trees around it and everything at the next crossroad. And she's like, "Is that one of those things? Is that one of those things?" Like, yes, that's one of them. And after that point in time, we started hearing more howls and stuff around the area. And like I said, it was the first sighting we had for the spring. And she was noticing more around her because that just kind of like put her on alert. And it was May 24th, if I remember correctly. They were coming back from my mom and stepdad's place because I was over there doing some homework. I'm still in college. And she and her daughter were coming back from there, and they had just parked the car. And as they were getting out of the vehicle, they hear 2 really loud howls from across the road. And they hadn't gotten to plant in that field just yet at that point in time because it had been really wet. So it was a clear view all the way across the field, but it was at night, so they couldn't see anything. And they told me that there was one howl, and she told her daughter, "Get in the house now." And as they were getting up to the porch there, they heard another howl. And then she said that as they were going in the door, they heard what sounded like a man and a woman screaming from the middle of the field, dead across from the driveway. Now, from what I've heard of reports of these things can make some really ungodly noises, aside from the typical howls, like what I've caught recordings of, and what I've heard other people record and everything. So it's possible that it could have been that. But this is the same field where the bike path runs and everything, and it was late May. And, late April, excuse me. So there was activity on the bike path, and I thought it was entirely possible that some poor unfortunate people may have been scared off the bike path by these things and were out in the field, and hopefully they got away. But the next night, I went back over there to the house, and it was after dark by the time I got over there towards the house, and they were plowing the field and planting. And there was a pickup truck out there beside the tractor, and the guy that was driving the tractor and the guy with the pickup truck was out there in front of the tractor with their headlights on something on the ground. I couldn't see what they were looking at because they were probably 25 yards into the field. But they were looking at something real close. And I'm not sure what it was, but it was right across from the driveway. So I'm hoping that maybe somebody had a goat that got loose and that was what they heard screaming and it got killed by one of these things. I certainly hope it wasn't a person.
Well, I sure hope so too. That wouldn't be good. At one time, your fiancée seemed to be interested in dogmen, considering some of the things you've told me about in the past. Because of the string of encounters she's had recently, has she lost her interest in them?
She's still interested. It's more for the safety aspect. She wants to kind of keep tabs on where they are and everything. But she is helping me as much as she can in my research and also trying to help the Nadp. She keeps a chronicle of when she hears activity or they actually come up to the house and look in the window and tap on the glass. We've had that. That's always fun. 2 a.m, we got all the lights out and all of a sudden we hear tap, 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 tap. And she'll look out through the kitchen window and she'll see eyes. That's always fun. But in one sense, it's really frustrating because I don't have the equipment set up to be able to catch these things up close to the house, which would be marvelous to be able to catch one on the camera. But at the same time, it doesn't help my peace of mind any knowing that they are getting into the yard and that close to the house, because there's a very large tree and a very large bush on either side of our porch that I wish that I could cut down, but she won't let me, because they'd be perfect things for these things to hide in or behind. And it's bad enough that we've already got pretty much a hard set rule not to go out at night unless I go out and check first, because I know what to listen for and everything. And she knows what they smell like because she's been with me when we've come across the scent trail of one of these things. And we've had the window open a couple times during the spring before we had the air conditioner in, and that scent would waft in pretty strong. And it's just like, well, we know where they're at. And like I said, again, it's just unnerving to know that they're getting that close to the house. I just wish there was something I could do to keep them back a bit. I mean, even if it was back 50 yards or more, that'd be great. But then again, at the same time, they're leaving evidence in the yard now and then. So it's kind of a 1-2 situation. It's like scary in one hand and great in another because, hey, they're bringing it to me,
Yeah, sounds like they are. Have you thought about posting game cams out there to maybe catch them on film?
Well, game cams kind of have their advantages and disadvantages. One, most of the time they have like a 1.5 to 2 second delay. And number 2, they're expensive. I don't have the kind of resources right now to get 5 or 6 of them like I'd like to and set up. That's why I'd kind of rather go with a DVR system which I'm looking at getting and putting it at a couple strategic places out there where I could put a couple wireless cameras and have them recording all the time.
Yeah, that'd be a really nice setup. Do you ever get the feeling that you encourage the dogman activity around your house to happen because of the research you've done on them?
Well, I don't know. It might not so much be the research that I've done on them as much as the fact that they know my scent. Because I've been around the areas down in Germantown for so long where, considering it's only 12 miles away, I'm pretty sure it's the same pack. And they know my scent, so they know that they can come and mess with me. And anybody who's with me, obviously. But that's what I'm kind of thinking that it is they pick up on a scent, or if they have any kind of an esoteric value to them, then maybe they pick up on that same energy, vibration, or whatever. Like I said, again, if they have that kind of sense. But like I said, if they're picking up on my scent, then they know who I am and they know where I've been. So that might be part of it. And that might be why there's been more activity up this way. I mean, there's been activity in the past, but I hadn't really seen much in the way of reports. But other than the occasional rumor, like, well, there's this thing running around out here, there's been more activity in her immediate vicinity. And of course, she knows about it now, so she's going to notice it. It's kind of like, have you ever been out on the road and you notice a lot more vehicles that are just like yours or the same make and model because you have that car, and then you switch cars and you really don't pay much attention to that car anymore, but you start noticing the cars that are similar to yours again. It's kind of that sort of thing. It's like you know about it, you're interested in it, you've got that intimate knowledge, so you're noticing it more. And coupled with the fact that these things catch on to people's sense or whatever, and they keep after them. People can move 20, 30 miles away, and they still have encounters.
Well, I hope you're wrong about that. I sure hope they don't have some kind of dogman APB out on you.
Hopefully they don't have access to the internet.
I hope not. Your fiance's daughter had an unnerving experience recently. What were the circumstances behind it?
Well, we were at the house, and she was laying down in her bed, and at that point in time, we didn't have curtains on her windows. And she said that she was laying there with her back towards the window. And just outside of the wall, she heard this loud for being outside, low growl. And she didn't look. She just kind of froze. And she heard it again. And again, she didn't look towards the window. And she slowly got up and came out. And her face said it all before anything came out of her mouth that she was scared. But she said that she heard this growl in her room, or while she was in her room, twice from outside the window. And we were like, "Are you sure it was a growl?" He's like, "There was no mistake in it." And she's a very mature, level-headed 13-year-old. Well, very level-headed and mature for a 13-year-old, I should say. But she was very straight on about it. She doesn't fool around with this kind of stuff. She wasn't trying to trick us or anything. And she had heard me describe, what I do with the Nadp and everything to her mom. But again, just like her mom was initially, she's like, "You're full of it. Yeah, haha, funny." But after she heard that made her a believer.
Oh, I'll bet that did make her a believer. A guest stayed with you not too long ago and had a sighting of her own. What'd she tell you about her experience?
Well, she said that she was at the sink looking out the window over the kitchen sink, and she saw something. Initially, it was going from east to west, just inside the edge of the cornfield. And there's an area in the cornfield where the corn didn't grow as tall as the rest of the corn right there near the edge of the field. And she said she got a good look at it She said it was at least half of its head taller than the corn. And it was big through the shoulders, extremely muscular. She said it had a really angular head with tall pointed ears, and that its skin was jet black, and it was covered in black fur. She couldn't see the bottom half because of the corn, obviously, but she got a good look at it from like the waist up at that point. And then it went further through the corn to right across from the window where she could see just the top of its head down to like where its eyes were. And she said it kind of looked around and then it took off again. And apparently somebody in a vehicle was out there on the road and saw it, because she said that she heard somebody screech to a halt at about the same time. And then when it got even with the driveway and ran off, she heard them take off like a bat out of you-know-where, and saw them zip past the cornfield in front of the house.
Are you the only investigator in that area that's actively out there looking for dogmen, or are there others that you know of?
That I know of, I don't really know of anybody else, although I'm starting to get more reports off and on. I met up with somebody the other day that said that they've seen something over the next town over from us. The next town over is Lewisburg, which is about 5 or 6 miles from the house. And this guy just met him by chance because we were helping, I guess, his sister or her friend or whatever with her car that was stalled out in front of my fiance's, I think it's her nephew's house, but it's just like 2 houses down. And we were talking for a little bit, and I asked him, since he lived out in Lewisburg, if he'd ever seen anything weird. He's like, well, I've got a couple little properties around, and I found some strange-looking tracks in front of the trailer on the one property. And it's like, oh, really? So what they look like? It's like, well, it was a few years ago when there was supposed to be that panther loose, but he said it didn't really look like a panther's paw print, and it was really huge. And I was like, So I brought up a picture from the website for the NADP, and he looked at one of them, and he's like, yeah, it was like that. And I was like, okay. I gave him a card and said, if you have any more sightings or you find anybody else who has seen anything, definitely give us a call. We'll come out and have a look at it. He seemed somewhat surprised by the fact that we had pictures of tracks of what he saw that was supposed to have been from a panther that was on the loose. And he said he also was in contact with a guy that supposedly had shot a 300-pound black wolf in Indiana. Now, I know dogs can get pretty huge. The biggest dog I've seen was a Great Mastiff that was about 212 pounds, and that was my uncle's Great Mastiff that he was using for breeding. And honestly, the biggest wolf that I've ever heard of being shot was something along the lines of 170 pounds, and that was a rather large specimen as it was. But 300 pounds in solid black, I gotta wonder if that wasn't a juvenile of one of these things, especially in Indiana, because Indiana is not known for having timber wolves, for one. I mean, unless they're starting to reintroduce them, and even then, even if it was a hybrid wolf hybridized with a dog, I would say that the likelihood that it would wind up being that huge would be very low.
Yeah, I'd say so. Not long ago, you noticed that steel gates have been erected to block off a road between Farmersville and Germantown. Please expand on that for us.
Yeah, that was actually Anthony Rhodes. It seems like they've been doing improvements on their ability to block it off at will as of the past couple of years. The gates, I was going down there to check things for signs and everything, and it seems that instead of blocking off the bridge like they had initially, they installed these steel gates that it's not like a full gate. It's more like you would find it, you've seen like in movies where they have the border crossing thing and it's like a gate that just goes across the road, but you could still get under it or over it if you were on foot. It's basically to block vehicle traffic and make it harder to get down through there. Now, they've given the excuse a few times that there supposedly is a lot of traffic as far as drug trafficking going on back there because it's a secluded area. And back in the 70s, from people that I've spoken to in the Farmersville area and Germantown, they said, oh, well, there were satanic cults that would go back there and do their thing. So the police didn't want people going down through there, around Halloween and at night and stuff like that. But this is something entirely new in the fact that it's a permanent gate. And that place floods once in a great while. But in my opinion, they don't really need a gate for that. I mean, it's just old dirt road, which they actually, when I went down there that time and saw those gates, they had really heavily graveled it, which doesn't leave them very much in the way of loose dirt to find tracks in anymore. So I'm going to go back down through there in the next, month or so and see if the dirt has kind of built back up a little bit to where it's settled out to where there could be more tracks found, because last time we went down through there, they had really hit it hard with really coarse gravel. So that might be an effort to try to keep people from looking for tracks and stuff, potentially. They can't really keep people off of the private property side of the road, though, where there's the potential to find tracks in the woods over there. But the fenced off side where the DNR took over, that's another matter, because when we were back there, it was October before last, if I remember correctly, when I was first showing Jody the carcass that we found. Like I said, it hadn't been repaved like that ever, and they didn't have it blocked off or anything at that point in time. Then the next year they'd start blocking off the road with a concrete barrier on one end of the bridge and road closed signs on the other, and then up at the other end, right by the Jackson Township training ground, they blocked it off with a concrete barrier there. And they just had a barrel to mark off that it was closed up at the end of the other end of Anthony Road where it meets Lower Gradus Road. And now they have these permanent gates that are sunk in concrete on one side and the post on the other side sunk in concrete made out of I-beams. And then they have this welded steel hinged gate. So they could, like I say, they can shut it off at will to restrict traffic. So again, I don't know if that's an effort to curtail traffic in the sense they're trying to put it out there as, or a effort to try to keep people out of there from looking for these things, because there's been a lot of curiosity seekers down through there as of the past couple of years, it seems like, especially after the howling was described in the Dayton Daily News and on Channel 5 from Cincinnati, outside of Liberty, Ohio, which is close. And of course, rumors get around, people are looking for these things over here close to Germantown, and there was supposedly the Germantown werewolf and the Butter Street monster, so maybe it's down here, So I'm thinking that might be in part one of the reasons why they are shutting it off, because of what they have been progressively doing down there as far as curtailing traffic and trying to have more of a quote-unquote police presence down there.
Between the heavy gravel they put down and the steel gates they installed, it sure sounds to me like the local authorities are refining their tactics there.
That's what we're kind of looking at, too. Because, like I said, up until 2008, when they actually initially fenced the one area off for the metro parks and everything, there was nothing down there that had anything to do with any kind of authority. And that was a year and a half after I had found a clothes down there with my ex-girlfriend.
That just might be what's behind it. While we're on this topic, you found a section of fence recently that incurred some strange damage. What can you tell us about that?
Well, again, down there along Anthony Road, this was during our trip down there where we were hearing stuff in the woods and everything, and the woods were silent. We went down through there, and we noticed some of the fence posts for the DNR were bent over really, really harshly. I mean, it almost looked like somebody tried to drive through it. But the area where the fence was completely down to the ground, there was no way that it was large enough for somebody to have tried to bring a car through it because it was stretched. The post on where the gap actually was where we could walk back in there, the post on the left of where we could go in was still straight up, but the post on the right was bent almost all the way down to the ground. And then the two posts after that were pulled in that direction by the fence. And even if a tree had fallen there, which there was no sign of a tree that had fallen there, we looked across the road and back into the woods a little bit from the other side of the road to see if there had been a tree that maybe fell and took it down. There wasn't any sign of that. No stump, no tree litter from where they cut it and put it back over the other side of the road or anything. No broken branches where the fence was down or anything from there. And no tire tracks from where somebody could have potentially run off the road and hit that. So we were thinking about, number one, why something would do that, and number two, how strong it would have to be to do that. And I've had experience with what they call T-posts, which is the style of posts that got down through there for that fence because it's easy to install them. You just beat it into the ground with a pulse driver. And those things are very hard to try to bend. I mean, it would take two men using their full weight to even start to bend one over. And this thing was just pushed down like somebody with massive strength had just taken it and shoved it to the ground. I mean, let alone with the fact that fence that was strung to the other two posts had taken the posts partway with them. And it had stretched this fence. So something massive, or at the very least extremely strong, and at least, well, one of these things, or something with the strength of one of these things, did that. And like I said, again, this is on the DNR side. And another thing I noticed about the place where they did it at, it was like there was a natural hollow right there with the way the branches were overhanging from the tree. And I'll see if I can find the pictures that I took of it if I still have them. But it was almost like an ambush spot that something had set up for it wouldn't have to try to jump over the fence to go after whatever it was after.
Yeah, the options of what could have done that to the fence are pretty limited, to say the least. The NADP has a new video coming out, Adam. Please tell us about it.
Well, this video, at least the investigation part earlier this summer, rattled some cages down in the LBL. You should actually have it out for Scarefest, if all goes according to plan here, down in Lexington. It's going to be a documentary about the LBL and what happened down there back in 1982 and 1988 and subsequent sightings of the beast of the LBL. I didn't get to do much of the production or anything on this one, unfortunately, but it's going to be a really, really good video. I've seen some of the clips of what the guys have been doing with it and the recreation of the scenes and stuff like that, and it is just going to be, it's going to be a spine tingler from what I've seen.
Sounds like a good video to me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's about that time. Before we get out of here, do you have any closing comments you'd like to share?
Well, as always, if you do decide to try to go looking for these things, my first suggestion is know what you're getting into first. And if you don't want to do the research on what you potentially get into, don't go looking for them. If you're having issues with them where you've seen them, or you know people who've seen them and they want to tell somebody, definitely let us know at the NorthAmericanDogmanProject.com. And, of course, always come to Vic, because if you're like me and you kind of have a little bit of the PTSD that goes with seeing these things, Vic is an awesome guy to talk to.
Well, thanks for the good words. You know, I appreciate it. If you turn up any other evidence and would like to come back on the show and tell us about that, or have any other interesting outings, yeah, please do let me know and we'll definitely bring you back on. But having said that, thank you so much as always for your time. Have a great night.
You too, Vic. Bye-bye.
Bye. If you've had a dogman encounter of your own and would like to speak with me, whether in private or on the show, please go to dogmanencounters.com and submit a report. I'd love to hear from you.